Today we are talking about the idea of domain and range from a graph. So, go ahead and fill in the blanks along with your notes. When describing the domain, and remember that's all of your x values, or range, which is all of your y values, of a relation, you can write the answer in the following form. For the domain, you can say something like all real x values. That's how you want to start. All real x values are going to be greater than, that's this symbol right here, less than, which is this symbol right here, greater than or equal to, which is this symbol right here, or less than or equal to, a specific number. Okay, so maybe I could say all x values greater than 2. So that means 2.5 works, 3 works, 100 works, because all of those values are greater than positive 2. Now we're going to be talking about some specific notation here. So I'm going to give you two examples to start off with, two images, so you can get an idea of what this looks like. So imagine you have an array like this. This one has a closed point. Now the only difference here is that this one has an open hole. So we're going to say a closed point, closed points, mean the number is included. You use the symbols less than or equal to, so make sure you have the line underneath, or greater than or equal to. Whereas an open hole, open holes, like this one, mean the number is not included. You use the symbols less than without the line underneath, or greater than without the line underneath. This is going to become a little bit more clear as we go on. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to be doing 6 examples today. 3 of them are a certain type. You're going to notice that all of these are just points. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you a new vocabulary word. These are called discrete relations, meaning that they're just individual points. It's like a scatter plot. Okay. Now what's going to happen is that for all of the domains, I'm going to say what x is possible, what x is equal to. And then for all the ranges, I'm going to say what y could be equal to. Okay? So here we go. If I'm looking at my x-axis, remember this is the x-axis, and I want to go from left to right, meaning I want to go from least to greatest with my numbers. So I see a point right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and find the x value. Oh, that's -3. I see a point right here from left to right. I find that x value, it's comma -1. I see another point, that one is right on +1. And I see another point over here, that x value is +4. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at the y-axis. Remember y to the sky? So that's going to be my y-axis. And for this one, I'm going to start from the bottom. I'm going to go all the way to the top. So I'm going to do the same idea, but I'm going to find the points, and I'm going to find their y value. So the first y value that I see is -2. This one right here is right on the x-axis, so it's 0. This point right here, so that's +1. And then finally this point right here, so that's +3. So now I've labeled the domain, which is x equals -3, -1, 1, and 4. And the range is y equals -2, 0, 1, and 3. Now I'm going to do the same process here. X-axis from left to right. I'm going to start with this point, find the x value, that's -2. Look at this point, find the x value, that's -1. Look at this point, that's +1. And what you're going to notice here is that there are actually 2 points that have +1, so I'm just going to put 1 only once. Now I'm going to look at my y-axis, and again I'm going to go from the bottom all the way to the top. So from the bottom, this is the first point that I see, which is at -2. This is the next point I see, and it actually is shared that's at positive 1, and then this is the next point at positive 3. So the domain of this relation is negative 2, negative 1, and 1, and the range of this relation is negative 2, 1, and 3. Now I'm going to look at all of the x values of this final example, again, from left to right. I see this point, it's at negative 4. I see this point, it's at negative 3. I see this point, it's at negative 2. I see this point, it's at negative 1. I see this point, it's at positive 3. So those are all of my x values. Now I'm going to go from the bottom to the top. From y values, the first thing that I see is that all of these three share the same y value, which is all positive 1. I just need to write that down once. This next point is positive 2. And this next point is positive 3. So now I know the domain and range of this last example. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about the idea of continuous relations. So not just points all over the place, but a line. So here are the next three examples. Now this one is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be talking about x values in between certain parts. It's the same idea though, so we're going to start with the x-axis, and we're going to go from left to right. The first thing that I see is this point right here. Now remember what we talked about is that a closed point means it's included, meaning that we're going to use something like less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. Okay? Now what we're going to do for this is we're going to say all x values are between two numbers. Because I see this is my lowest point, and then I see this is actually my highest point. But this one, remember, closed, an open hole is not included. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to say all x values are between negative 3 and positive 2. Okay? Positive 2 is not included. I know you might not have a lot of space on your paper for this if you want to write this down on a separate sheet of paper. Now when you're writing it with symbols, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and erase this just for the time being, just so you can see it. So all x values are between negative 3 and 2 is not included. So I'm going to go all the way from negative 3, and I know I'm talking about my x values, and I know I'm going to go all the way to positive 2. So x is going to be actually greater than or equal to, or in a different way, that negative 3 is less than or equal to all of the x values, and that x is also less than 2. So see what I'm saying? I'm taking this bottom number, I'm saying, oh, that's included. And then I'm going to take this top number, I'm going to say, oh, that's not included. Remember, the not included means less than or greater than, without the line underneath. So now let's talk about the range. Now the range has the same idea. Again, we're going with the y-axis though. So we're going to start from the bottom and then go to the top. So the lowest point that I see is right here. So positive 1. All the way to highest point that I see is this one right here, which is at positive 3. So I'm going to say it's all of the numbers between 1 and 3. So this bottom point is included, so I'm going to write less than or equal to. And then this top point is a whole, so I'm just going to write less than. Okay? We're just going to go ahead and write it with the symbols, but just to understand that it means between 1 and 3, with 3 not included. I'm going to go ahead and erase this so we can do example 5 with a little bit more space. So if we're looking at example 5, same idea. I'm going to go with my x-axis. I start from the left. I go all the way to the right. Okay, so the first point that I see from the left is this one right here. Now if you didn't know, this arrow means it goes on forever. So all x values greater than or equal to, then I check out this x value, oh, it's at -1. So how I would write that with symbols is I would say everything that x is greater than or equal to -1. That's all I need to say. Okay? Because all of these x values are okay forever, all the way to positive infinity. Make sure to write that down. I'm going to go ahead and erase it so we have more space for the range. This next part, I'm going to be, again, talking about my y-axis. So from the bottom all the way to the top. Okay, so the lowest point that I see is right here, which is at -2. So it's from -2. So let's write this a different way. Anything above -2. So a different way of saying that is I'm going to say y is greater than or equal to, remember, because it's a closed point, it's not an open hole, -2. Okay? Now let's do this final example. Example 6. Again, we're going to go from left to right. You're going to notice something interesting here, that from the left-hand side it goes on forever. So this goes on to -infinity. So in this case, it's going to be helpful to talk about this high point, and anything less than +3 is okay. So x can be less than +3. Okay? Finally, we're going to be talking about the range. And sorry, one more point about this. Because it's an open hole, that's why it's just less than and not less than or equal to. Okay? So then we're looking at the range. We start at the bottom point. There it is, +1. And that's not included. And then this goes up forever. So y can be equal to anything greater than +1. Okay? So that's our lesson for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Study up.